So my name is Brad and I'm the Dungeon Master for Whiskey Dice, which is a show where my friends and I gather around the table on Friday nights and we play Dungeons and Dragons while having a drink or two or three. We've just finished playing through our first 20 sessions of the main campaign on the channel, and I wanted to do a recap of that, mainly for those that wanted to skip Season 1 and jump right on into Season 2. Also, this recap has a lot of precursor lore that maybe my players don't know about, and they can actually watch this video and get some insights into the campaign that I've kind of built up around them. The campaign follows the heiress of Twilight, Jophiel, played by Andrea. But who is the heiress? Well, she is the daughter that is supposed to bring peace to the two major factions of the world. So the world we're talking about is named Whist. The campaign is being played on one of the continents on the world of Whist that's called Alora, or the realm of Alora as I generally refer to it. The two major factions on the world now are the Chamberlains, also known as the Sovereign Pillars, which are the last vestige of divine godlike beings within the galaxy, and they are settlers on this world. They're not originally from it. They traveled here for centuries to reach this world after a great war among the stars ended. Inhabiting the world when they got there is the other faction, the God Beasts. The world of Whist was all but devoid of life except for these majestic godlike beings that were created from the world soul itself. They embody many different things from dragons to humanoids to other beasts and even in some rare cases objects. They are important as they are more powerful, some of them, than this last known family known as the Sovereign Pillars. So this is important because of the theme of the campaign. The recurring theme across many of my stories over the last decade leading to this point center around something called the doomed cycle. And what is that? Well, it's a repetitive cycle where gods create life, and then they create planets, and then they create mortals, and then they meddle in mortal affairs, and then they do so in a way that usually leads to wars, cataclysms, and in this case, full-out extinction of all life within the galaxy. The God Beasts were actually created by the world soul of Whist as a last-ditch effort to kind of bring an end to this doomed cycle once and for all. But when the Sovereign Pillars arrived on this world, the God Beasts didn't know that they would bring this curse so heavy to bear upon them. So the God Beasts are headed by the Big Three: Aolin the Voice, Arata of the Rain, and Serthos the Titan. Aolin represents Alora and the God Beast kind of as a whole collective, and each of the Big Three have had many children, but only a handful are on the scale near their power. Also, they're minor God Beasts, but don't let that name fool you. They are not any less powerful than those just under the Big Three. But why is that? Well, Jophiel is also a minor God Beast. She's the daughter of Serenity Chamberlain, one of the Sovereign Pillars, and also of Aolin, who is the voice of the God Beasts. These minor God Beasts are children born across unions among the two factions. Serenity was the first to offer herself to wed Aolin, and then many more of the Chamberlains and their close family members actually followed suit. Now, who actually are the Sovereign Pillars? Like, who are the Chamberlains? Well, we have Velark and Voidreth to start us off, who are twin brothers who represent two major outer planes of existence, the Void and the Veil. This is important because as the Chamberlains traveled to Whist, they did so on three arcs that were essentially giant floating landmasses in the sky, protected by the Veil and the Void, like a giant half-bubble on either side protecting what was acting as the material plane of existence in the center, which itself was the arc known as the Vision. Now on the Vision was the rest of the Chamberlains, their families, closest servants, and knights, and then around 3 million surviving mortals and creatures from the last worlds to fall from the Great War among the stars. Serenity was here along with her brother Essos, Alile, and Elmadan. Those three brothers are referred to as the Triumvirate, and they are representatives of this Church of the Triadic Conclave, which has taught faith and divinity for centuries, and acted as the ruling force over all mortal life that is left. So the Triumvirate represent all clerics, paladins, and warlocks within the world of Whist, even to this day, each of them also representing a single order amongst the church itself. Essos of the Order of the Ascendant Flame, Alile of the Harmonious Choir, and Elmadan of the Locket. United together, they are very powerful, but they're weak if they splinter off amongst themselves. The church was built this way so that it could only operate as a combined order. Now, for the antagonists, and for just what is going on in the story itself, before the Chamberlains, or the Sovereign Pillars as we call them, ever made it to Whist, there was a rebellion within the Veil against Velark, as his eldest son Ithrin disagreed with his father's want for peace on this new world. He then, Ithrin, banished Velark deep within the Veil. He stole his heart and then brokered a dark deal with this entity that is still unknown within the campaign as of yet. He then created a mimic of Velark to act as his own puppet, to sow the seeds for his machinations and warmongering to come. There is thunder outside. Cool. As the Chamberlains arrive, it is this false veil arc that prompts war against the God Beasts initially when they all show up on this world. But eventually, Serenity would put a stop to this false veil arc's lust for war. She would make peace, marry Eowyn, and now this matters because Ithrin was actually promised to Serenity in a very Targaryen fashion. They were to be wed to strengthen the family lines themselves. When Serenity in essence betrayed this, Ithrin had this false veil arc kill her. In the aftermath, Eowyn, having never felt grief on this scale, but with the power to just decimate all life if he wanted to, he actually recused himself from the situation, giving the Chamberlains only 3 centuries, I say only 3 centuries, but all these creatures have lived for so long, to figure their crap out, so that he did not have to do what the world soul was actually bidding him to do, begging him to do, to end all life and to end the cycle forever. Rosie wants to come do dialogue too. Hello, Rosie. Say hello, Rosie. Goodbye, Rosie. Now, Ithrin, of course, is not known to be a villain at this time, so the Chamberlains banish this false veil arc, and then Voidreth comes up with this crazy plan to make himself this all-powerful being long enough to banish all of the gods from this world, and to make the mortal lines not related to the Chamberlains directly forget the name of veil arc forever. Why do names matter? Well, because in my games, in my worlds, names give power, and if you don't worship a name and you begin to forget it, it will grow weak and then be forgotten, at least within my iceberg of divinity. So Jo feels rightfully angry. She's grieving, her father has just left her, and now she has to head her mother's Knights of the Chamberlains, known as the 13 Keys. She does do so willingly because this plan of Voidreth has a major pitfall in her eyes, at least. The Sovereign Pillars have found a new home here, but the God Beast actually control their own heaven and hell and the souls within the world, but now the funneling of all these new souls as well. Voidreth asks the God Beast to allow him to harness the dead as they perish, to ingest their souls so that he can ascend to a greater state of power to be able to make his plan come to fruition. They do end up agreeing, but that means that Voidreth needs souls, so he enlists his own army. He calls them the Zealous Order, and our antagonists are at its head. Ithrin is the one that kind of becomes the leader of the Zealous Order originally, and Ithrin begins to lay siege to cities, against his own people, to villages, and the amassed armies of these people that are just bounding together to try and fight off these gods that have been leading them for so long. As this is all going on, the 13 Keys are just following behind, healing who they can, and rebuilding these cities and villages. It is a war that is called the War of the Denounced Times, and one that none other than the family remembers now, like during the campaign times that have begun hundreds of years later. At the end, Voidreth would get what he wanted, but Ithrin made sure to cement his future plans as well. At the end of the war, Eowyn did return for a brief time to show Voidreth something called the Elate Seal. It was an artifact that was used on Wist during its downfall of the Doomed Cycle to banish all the gods and to kind of try and end the Doomed Cycle during the heyday of Wist. It didn't work entirely, but this artifact does still exist. They also created this band of warriors called the Elodar, and they were going to protect this seal, the Elate Seal, for the generations to come. And every generation there would be someone among the Elodar that was kind of blessed by Eowyn that would be birthed as a seal keeper. One that would act as a key bearer of the seal medallion that acts kind of as a lock and key device. Eowyn did this to promise to Voidreth that if his family was not done with all their quarrels by the time he had returned in 3 centuries, that he would unleash all that was sealed behind this door, and he would wipe every one of them out with one fell swing. Jofield decides that she's going to do a similar thing. Like, she's not going to be banished by Voidwrath via the Elate Seal because she is not a god. She may be powerful, though, and in her mind, she also needs to kind of exit stage left. So she decrees that her and the 13 Keys will leave their marks on this world via something called a walk. Now, what's a walk? It's a pilgrimage that was taken actually by the likes of all of the Sovereign Pillars before they were banished from this world, or before, as they would say, they left this world, so that others in the future could walk these paths for enlightenment and guidance in their futures. And after that, the 13 Keys would essentially be frozen in time via stone, and their memories wiped and powers taken. She entrusted this to be done by her brother Eli, who is also the son of Serenity and Eowyn. As all are banished, or as all leave, or as all forget their memories, or are frozen in time, Ithrin has actually made dozens of backdoors back into the realm. He has found the Zealous Order to be an ally, at least for now. Castiel is at its head. Now, who's Castiel? Castiel is one of the sons of Voidreth. Ithrin readies his return on the day that Jophiel will be awakened near a century later, so that she can see his grand design for herself. Ithrin does this because if he could not have Serenity, then maybe now in the future he could actually have Jophiel, as Jophiel has now reached about 200 years of age at this point, and of great power. Even with her giving most of it up, there's still a chance that together they could rule, destroy all the god beasts, and that this world could be theirs to conquer forever. And this is actually where the story begins. Jophiel awakens within a place called the Umbral Ascent Prison, which is a dimension unto itself within one of the god beasts known as Night River. It opens once per cycle or year to allow prisoners out and to exchange wardens, which are like the prison keepers. In the time she was gone, the world was governed by the Church of the Triadic Conclave, its secrets were protected by the Zealous Order, and the faces, the faces of rule, were left to these High Lords, which were chosen by the Zealous Order when the sovereign pillars and the other gods and things left this world. This is an issue because all of these leaders, except for the church directly, are tied to Ithrin's plans. During Ithrin's time away, the Zealous Order decided they would allow Ithrin to kind of do as he pleased, but that they had planned to double-cross him in the future, because this is kind of a theme within this family. They knew that Ithrin wanted to be king, or sovereign ruler, but they instead all agreed that it would be best if Castiel's son, Sir Cedric Chamberlain, was the one to take the throne instead, as they had trained him, or were going to train him since birth, to be this very powerful paladin, to embody all of the Triumvirate's power. So as I was saying, Jophiel exits this prison, and Ithrin and his siblings, the other Knights of the Vale, actually exit alongside her, unbeknownst to her, as they are disguised as these prisoners and wardens. And Sir Cedric Chamberlain is actually the one to greet her. Cedric is played by Ian within the campaign, another one of my players, and he has come because he knows something is not right with what he's been being taught throughout his childhood unto adulthood. Essos, his god, one of the Triumvirate, is actually guiding Cedric in some way, and has been since his birth, hinting at the treacheries of his father and the order from beyond the realm. Cedric thinks that Jophiel can clear things up for him, to show him the path, but alas, she actually has amnesia. Joining Cedric here now is Alex Dawnkeeper and Everett Whitlock. Alex is a master of the forge within the city of Ophius, and he is here because he wants Cedric to kind of show him how faith and divinity works. He's doing so because he's trying to find a cure or someone that can save his father, who is dying from a seemingly incurable curse. Everett is the false son of the Sword of the High Lords, known as the Hawk, but truly he's the son of one of the High Lords, and it seems to be destiny that these two actually found their way to Cedric and Jophiel. But what guided them is still yet to be seen, at least as of this point it was. Also, Alex is played by Sean in the campaign, and Everett is played by Alex. So yes, one of my players is playing a character named after one of the actual players at the table. Very much an honor. Anyway. Together, these four set out on an adventure to find out the truth. Kind of the truth of Jophiel's amnesia, and then everything else that, they have questioned thus far. They feel that something is coming, like this foreboding cloud. Something bad just seems to be about to happen, because Jophiel has awakened, and Cedric had always kind of heard that there's this prophecy that if any of the 13 begin to awaken, then bad things are coming. Ithrin, meanwhile, needs Jophiel to kind of be out of the way for a time, as he takes stock of what allies he has for him, so he can get kind of busy getting rid of the High Lords within the capital and to take leadership for himself. He decides to use a would-be ally of Cedric to capture him and his allies, and he's going to actually sell them to the beasts of this isle called Sorborg, and this does inevitably happen in the campaign. After the party are actually confronted by Ithrin, because he just couldn't help himself but to come show his face. In doing so, he did find out that Jophiel did indeed not remember him, that she does have amnesia. So while this is happening, and they actually escape, Ithrin allows it. Ithrin begins to use, and he kind of does this out of rage. He was almost ticked off that Jophiel didn't immediately remember who he was. So this is all actually taking place at the Elate Seal, and he takes out all of his rage on the Elodar, and he brings forth the power of his father through the veil, and he begins to turn all the creatures around him veil touched. He essentially starts to enslave creatures to his will. Now, this is also important because what Ithrin didn't know is that Castiel had also figured out how to use this power as well. And this is kind of where the two sides begin to conflict with one another. So Jophiel, Cedric, and the others are gone for months, and they actually find two new allies that join the party on Sorborg. They were enslaved just like the gang was. And together they actually liberate the Isle of Sorborg and befriend those that captured them. Unfortunately, these allies would eventually be taken as veil touched later on. Not the two that joined the party, but those that were liberated on the Isle. And they are added to the Zealous Order's army that's being amassed to face Ithrin. But the two new allies that joined the party, they didn't just find themselves here out of the blue. So who do we have? We have Rylal Nocturnus and Zira Moonveil, and they were strategically put here, even though that has yet to be played out or found out in the campaign to its entirety. But their capture was no coincidence. Rylal is a porcelain elf, which are akin to the Drow, and they're from a place called the Endless Staircase, which is a realm of the minor god beasts, like Jophiel. And these elves, these porcelain elves, were the servants of the Veil at one point before coming to this world. Rylal was left in the staircase by his mother and his father, who actually still did reside there, but Rylal did not know of either of them. As a baby, his father, Sable, and his mother, Jalil, left the babe to be trained by the Elindrin house. The houses of these porcelain elves are kind of named kind of like Drow houses are in Faerun lore. He grew up strong and fierce, one of the strongest of their line. His parents did this, though, to protect him, but to also make sure that when it came time, like as he grew up, that he could protect himself and the others around him. Once, of course, he learned what compassion and family was, which is kind of a fun angle that's being played out within the campaign itself. So Sable is the strongest of the minor god beasts, and Jalil is a servant of Valark, the true Valark himself. And Jalil specifically, is a leader of this order called the Dark Triangle. Now, who's the Dark Triangle? They are interdimensional protectors. They hold thousands of doorways to the past and future, very Doctor Who-esque. And they also hold an artifact that can project these doors. They are the reason that the doomed cycle has been combated as well as it has over the past centuries, and that it is not yet taken the last vestiges of all life, at least not as of yet. Now, for Zira, she is yet to kind of see her role in the campaign and to kind of play out all of her backstory. It's still kind of a mystery to the party, but what she has done is come across a codex that has given her the ability to understand, read, write, and speak all languages that the writer of the codex has ever come across. Now, this matters for a ton of reasons, and her power is still growing more as the campaign progresses. Also, Rylal is played by Chris, and Zira is played by Tatiana. So the rest of the campaign thus far has followed the party finding out all of the treacheries of the Zealous Order and Ithrin. They've gathered allies and made new foes. Cedric has actually left the party for now to take the Walk of Essos to gain power and clarity, while Jophiel and the others are kind of weeding out just who they can trust. And in the climax of the first season, Jophiel has found out that her brother actually awakened all of the other keys except for her and one other named Cassiel, because he was bored. He was also apparently helping Ithrin all along. Very jealous of Jophiel was Eli. Jealous that she was mother's favorite and father's favorite. Jophiel and her allies now know that war is actually coming to the realm and that they are kind of one of three sides within this conflict. The god beasts now rally to Jophiel's cause, and her other allies are about to arrive soon. The first season was one of, like I said, kind of weeding out all the lies and truths. And the second season will follow the party as they set the stage for war or perhaps find peaceful resolutions. Regardless, we do hope to see you there, of course, as we continue our adventures within the realm of Alora, next time on Whiskey Dice. But one other tidbit I want to throw in there that I kind of left out is that Everett actually came in to possess the heart of the Vale, Valark's heart, and he was actually chosen by Valark whenever the artifact, the heart itself, took him to become a Vale Knight, which essentially makes Ithrin and his kin not Knights of the Vale anymore. That also is something that has not really, been explained in full as of yet, and I think will be a fun storyline in season 2. And also to end this was not an easy video to make, mainly because of some stuff that's going on around me personally at the moment. That's kind of why I did it in this fashion, and it's not going to be as epic of a recap as I was hoping for. At times, I do think I kind of rambled on here and there, even though I kind of wrote everything out as I went through. It's not as fluid of a recap as I probably would have wanted. But if you did listen this far, I do thank you for that. We do thank you for those that do check out our stuff, even if it is just shorts or the kind of single form content that I make, where I just get to sit behind my DM screen or my camera here at the computer and just talk one-on-one with you guys. So yeah. Thanks so much for walking. Blah, 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 blah. Nice little blooper to say bye-bye.